2030. The Liberal Party originally criticized those targets as being too weak, and when they became the government, they then adopted them. The interesting thing is the Parliamentary Budget Officer, who is an independent officer of Parliament, has stated very clearly, Canada will not reach its climate change commitments under the plan that's been put forward by the Liberals. He is a non-partisan officer of Parliament. Our plan, like I discussed, is three things. Number one, an investment in green technology. There is exciting technological developments that are taking place right now with respect to carbon capture, carbon conversion. 20% of global climate emissions are steel. Right now, there's companies that are investing in technologies that will eliminate carbon emissions in the production of steel. We are proposing a green patent credit that will reduce the tax rate to 5% on income that is generated from green technology and patented in Canada. This will stimulate our innovators, our investors, to try and create these green technologies that will dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We're also going to take a sector-by-sector regulatory approach with the big emitters, because the big emitters are the ones that are significantly increasing carbon emissions in Canada. The Liberal plan does not require big emitters to reduce taxes, carbon emissions. All they have to do is pay a carbon tax or buy carbon credits elsewhere. It's not going to get us where we need to go. Finally, we need a cleaner and greener natural environment. We want to conserve and protect our land, water, air, and wildlife. And finally, we want to take this global. China is increasing their carbon emissions significantly every month. And if we do not get the big emitters on side, we cannot save the planet.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl. And now for his 2 minutes, Stefan Wiesen of the Green Party.
Did you say 2 hours?
I may have misspoke.
I mentioned that we have Mission Possible, our 20-point climate action plan. I would like to highlight a few points which I particularly recommend with highest priority. Let's establish an inner cabinet of all parties in Ottawa. Stop the bickering. Stop the back and forth. Government A comes, government B comes, unravels, government C, you know what I'm talking about. We need, for this crisis, all hands on deck. I'm not suggesting we abolish democracy, just for this specific issue. It has to be multi-partisan. It cannot be a partisan issue. Number two, we have to be really stringent on the targets. I mean, numbers have been flying around the room. The Greens say we said 60% greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 in 11 years compared to 2005 standards, and being zero carbon by 2050. And I appreciate that the Liberal Party has taken on our green goal. Assume leadership, Carl. I agree with you 100%. Other countries, I mean, we cannot expect every country to have leadership about climate change. And Canada, indeed, is not the biggest emitter in the world. In our introduction, we mentioned that we are big emitters relatively to population, relatively to our peers. However, leadership is what I love about this country. We have to take the leadership. And if we miss our targets, if we struggle with missing our targets, where is the famous Canadian leadership, which we have shown in peacekeeping and other measures? So that's very, very important, to get other countries on board through leadership. Last but not least, as an example, green the grid. Our electrical grid would benefit from better east-west transmissions so that clean energy can flow, let's say, from Quebec to Ontario and all across the country. That would be a huge investment, and we are all in favor of implementing this right away.
Thank you, Stefan. Last speaker on this particular question for the New Democratic Party, Alison Brown.
Thank you, Ray. The NDP has put forward a bold $15 billion climate change plan that confronts the climate crisis. It limits warming to 1.5 degrees and creates 300,000 good jobs. The plan includes major investments in low-carbon transportation infrastructure, like public transit, rail, and ferries. But it also helps families afford zero-emission vehicles through much more generous tax credits that actually grow if you buy a vehicle made in Canada, which will help ensure good jobs building the vehicles for the future to stay right here in Canada. It also includes help for families to install charging stations at home and investments to expand charging station infrastructure across the country. It also includes an ambitious building retrofit program that I think will make a huge difference in the lives of people in Dufferin-Caledon. Homeowners will be able to access no-interest loans to undergo energy efficiency projects in their homes. This will not only lower emissions and make homes more comfortable, but it will create thousands of jobs in the skilled trades and supporting industries and save families on average $900 a year in utility costs. Dufferin-Caledon has probably seen, like the nation has seen, some of the negative impacts of climate change, extreme weather events, and are becoming more common and more damaging. Flooding has been a major problem. Our plan includes expanding federal funding to $2.5 billion to respond to disasters, as well as working with communities to proactively adapt their infrastructure to withstand extreme weather events like floodproofing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And a quick reminder to our audience that if you have any questions, write them down. We've got runners who will pick them up and we can add them to our pile. The second national question we have concerns water. Many Canadians know that our country has the longest coastline in the world. Less well known is that Canada is home to roughly half of the world's lakes and roughly 10% of the world's wetlands. Canada is seeing the impact that industrial development and climate change is having on our water resources. We are seeing the re-emergence of pollution hotspots like Lake Erie. And the Insurance Bureau of Canada notes that since the 1970s, there has been a massive 250% increase in natural disasters, including floods and droughts, that are likely related to climate change. What can the federal government do to work with different sectors like municipalities and farmers to reduce both water pollution and the risk of flood events which have been aggravated by industrial development and climate change? And I hope it's not a surprise to our panelists that I'm starting with Michelle.
Thank you. We haven't had our share of natural disasters like other places have, but who can forget that image of somebody canoeing downtown line when we had the flooding a year and a half ago? Some of the things that we're doing is we've introduced a $2 billion disaster mitigation and adaptation fund, and we've added $1 billion to that in our platform to help communities prepare for climate change through more resilient infrastructure. We have also put in a chemicals management plan with regulations being prepared to limit toxic chemicals like BPA from getting into Canada's freshwater reserves. We've invested $8.95 million to support 36 projects under the Great Lakes Protection Initiative, preventing toxic algae and reducing the release of harmful chemicals. And we have also been working with municipalities through infrastructure funding to upgrade wastewater treatment facilities. I know that this issue is a particular concern up in Shelburne, but it's also a concern here as well, to help keep our waterways clean and pollution-free. We've set up a new nature climate fund to work with farmers and municipalities to store carbon and protect biodiversity while supporting our economy at the same time. Those are a few of the things that Liberals are doing to better protect our water supply and mitigate against climate change disasters. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. We now go on to Kyle Seebeck.
So a Conservative government will want to protect our waterways, first of all. We want to support and maintain watershed protection, including the Great Lakes. We want to protect our wetlands, because wetlands do a whole bunch of things. They protect us from floods and droughts. They recharge our groundwater, purify our water. They provide important habitat for fish and wildlife. And they offer opportunities for recreation, and in addition, they sequester carbon. We want to lead a science-based terrestrial and marine conservation assessment to identify the best opportunities for expanding our protected area network, parks, marine, migratory bird sanctuaries, national wildlife areas. We also want to continue the Canadian wetlands inventory. Finally, we want to consult with Indigenous peoples to explore options for their more active participation in the management of protected areas. I also want to talk about two specific things. Number one, we're not going to allow our waterways to be used as toxic dumping grounds. A few years ago, you're going to recall that the current government allowed the City of Montreal to dump 500 billion litres of raw sewage into the St. Lawrence River. That is not maintaining our waterways. We will work with our municipalities to end all raw sewage dumps into marine and freshwater ecosystems. Secondly, in 2007, a Conservative government put forward and implemented the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund. It funded over 200 community-based projects that restored fish, wildlife populations, planted thousands of trees, and reduced harmful sewage and waste dumps into the watershed. This program was cancelled in 2017 by the Liberal government. We will restore the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we continue with Stefan.
I like everything Michelle and Carl have said. Great initiatives, but these are our main political parties who have shared power here and there for many, many years. Why now? Why not years ago? Let me tell you a water story which comes right out of our community. That's a company called Exogen. And I know the owner, I know what they're doing. They are providing equipment that purifies industrial discharge into our waters in the Great Lakes. I double-checked this morning because I couldn't believe it when I heard it first 6 years ago. It is okay to discharge industrial waste into our waters. You pay a fine, you discharge, you pay a fine, you discharge, you pay a fine. And the equipment made right here locally is available to clear these waters. It's the lack of political willpower to force companies to use equipment by local companies like Exogen to use this equipment rather than paying a fine. That clearly shows. And that's our green plan. The green plan is economically sound. It's fiscally responsible. Let's create more jobs, local jobs, through innovative companies that fight climate change. And governments have failed by enforcing good legislation and only talking about it. Second failure is on farmers. Our farmers have, in large numbers, transferred their farms to industrial conglomerates. Fiscally, that has been very interesting for the farmers because, from a fiscal perspective, it's tax-wise better to sell than to pass on to the next generation. That's a massive failure that we can, through tax law, reverse and rather help farmers to transition to the next generation, where young farmers have ideas, regenerative farming, soil regeneration, using measures to bring farming back where it was before.
Thank you, Stefan. Next, we will hear from Alison Brown.
Thank you. We know that we have to do better as a country. We'll recognize Canadians' right to a healthy environment by enshrining in law and create a federal environmental bill of rights to make sure that everybody can enjoy clean water, air, and land. We'll create a national freshwater strategy, work with the provinces and territories to protect waterways and restore navigable waters, protecting the, To tackle increasingly common floods, we'll work with communities all over Canada to make sure that they have the resources they need to manage disasters. We will empower local leaders with the right tools to adapt to climate change and protect families and businesses from new weather extremes. That means putting federal adaptation funding on a long-term track that reflects the scale of our challenge. Investing in resilience now, from flood mitigation to wildfire breaks, shoreline stabilization, and enhancing natural infrastructure, avoids steeper costs later. Improving Canada's flood maps is an urgent necessity, and building municipal capacity to assess and respond to climate risks is key to identifying the most cost-effective resiliency projects over the coming decades. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison. We're going to move on to our third national question now. Whoops, sorry, we're going to move on to Chad. Now I remember you.
So again, with these being my personal policies, not a policy of the party, I stuck with more of a local incentive. This is headwaters. The majority of Ontario gets their water from our area because of where we're at in relation to the sea level. You have the Grand River to the west, and you have the Humber to the east. These need to be protected. Common sense. We shouldn't be dumping raw sewage and toxic materials into our waterways. That's just common sense. I don't want to see places like Nestle coming in and taking our water rights. We need to protect our waters from corporations that want to misuse it and abuse it just to take advantage of the environment. Whenever we discourage these companies from taking our water rights,